Language is the tool that we all use to communicate about our daily lives. Languages borrow words all the time as new things enter our life from exchanges with other communities. Because of this, we can actually track the spread of cultural things across the world through language. In this episode of Linguistic Lichen, we'll use language to put the history and spread of chess under the microscope. In case you haven't played chess before, this is a chessboard. There are a couple of terms that will come in handy when you're watching this video. With the pieces we have the pawns, the rooks, the knights, the bishops, the queens, and the kings. The aim is to get the other player's king in a position where they can't do anything to stop it being taken. This is called checkmate. If a player makes a move that threatens to take the other player's king, this is called a check. Just a warning, in this video I'll be attempting to pronounce relevant terms in different languages. Please forgive me if my pronunciation is terrible, but here goes. So, the game we know and love as chess today is actually descended from an Indian game called chaturanga, meaning having 4 limbs or parts, a word with military connotations. It has slightly different pieces and rules from modern chess, but you can see the resemblance. It's pretty much agreed that this game is the origin of many different popular board games played around the world today. If you want to play chaturanga, you can actually give it a go on the popular chess website chess.com. I've put a link to that in the description. The next step on our journey is an empire in the land of modern-day Iran. In the language Middle Persian, the game was known as chaturanga, a borrowing straight from Sanskrit. In modern Farsi, present-day chess is known as shatranj. Middle Persian is where the term shahmat first came from, meaning something like the king is surprised. This term is actually the ancestor of the English word checkmate, but is also really clearly seen as the ancestor of words like the word for checkmate in German, schachmat, and chess itself in Russian, which is shachmaty. Also, Middle Persian roh, meaning chariot, is the word that we get the English word rook from. Now we wander through the vast lands of the Arabic language. As it travelled through, this game got called chaturanga. Something unfortunate happened along the way though. Remember the king that kept getting surprised in Middle Persian? Seems like he died somewhere along the way, because in Arabic there was a homophone, or a word that sounded the same, as the word for surprised in Middle Persian that meant to die in Arabic. It's interesting though, because even in modern chess I know lots of people who actually think of the pieces as dying when they get taken. So this idea of a checkmated king being dead has lived on for quite a long time. The Arabic language is a language that spreads its cultural power far and wide, especially to places with a large Muslim population. We can see where chess has been spread by Arabic speakers in multiple far-flung languages such as Swahili, where the game is known as sataranji, or even Turkish, where it is known as satranj. However, the place we're most interested in as we trek towards English is Spain. Arab people ruled over big areas of the Iberian Peninsula for hundreds of years, and this has left lots of lasting influences on Spanish language and culture. One of these, wow, what a coincidence, was the wonderful game of chess. The Spanish language itself was having a few sound changes at the time, so it's a little hard to see the resemblance at first, but in modern Spanish, it is known as ajedrez, which, incidentally, has been spread to other languages, for example, the Tagalog ajedrez. The game was very prestigious all over Europe now. A couple of interesting tweaks were happening to the names of the pieces as they continued to spread. For example, the piece which up until this point had a name based on the Middle Persian pir, meaning elephant, was morphing into something else entirely, as lots of Europeans reckon the bit on the top of the piece looked a lot like the hat of a bishop. In Latin, a very important language in the academic and literary worlds throughout and even after medieval times, the game was given the name skaki, the plural of skakus, which was used to mean check. This was modelled after the Arabic word shah, which came from the Middle Persian word for king that we saw earlier. So, how exactly did we get from Latin skaki to English chess? The prime suspect in our hunt is Norman French. For hundreds of years, French was the language of the rich and famous in England, starting from the Norman conquest in 1066. The Latin skakus was borrowed into Old French as eschec, the plural of which was as chess, which turned into English Czech and chess respectively. A journey through multiple continents and many languages finally reaches English. However, this is actually not the only direction chaturanga-based games spread. Another way the game spread was to East Asia. There is a game still played in China today called xiangqi, which is believed to probably also be descended from chaturanga. Its rules are pretty different from chaturanga and way different from modern European chess, but there are still a couple of things you can recognize. This game spread to Korea as changgi, the modern version of which is very similar to xiangqi, and this subsequently moved on its way to Japan as the game shogi, a game that you can notice is different from xiangqi and changgi, that is still very popular in Japan today. There are many other interesting games descended from chaturanga spread out in even more places far and wide around the world, including hmakruk, a Thai game where the pawns start with a little buffer zone between them and the more valuable pieces, Sant Adaj, an Ethiopian version where you can race your opponent to make literally as many moves as you want without waiting for the other player until the first piece is taken, and Seturjain, a Burmese variant where in the first stage of the game you get to choose the spots to make your very own custom setup. Sometimes, terms for chess can spread from one direction but end up being used for a different version of the game. Take, for example, in Indonesian and Malay, the word catur, pretty clearly a clipping of the Sanskrit chaturanga, actually is used solely to refer to the modern game that we know in English as chess. In these languages, the name for many of the pieces, such as Raja, Mantri, and Gajah, are also borrowed from Sanskrit as well. But interestingly, in Indonesian, one piece, benteng, is actually a semantic calque, which is a type of word borrowing where a word that already existed in a language is given a new meaning that it had in the original other language. In this case, the English word castle has multiple meanings, including a big fancy type of building, as well as being another name for the chess piece, also known as a rook. This chess-related meaning was also extended into Indonesian, so benteng, which already meant castle in Indonesian, now started to do double duty as well. That segues us very well into the next section. We've traced the long and complicated path chess took to reach the English language, but the language we're communicating in here and now isn't actually the end of the road. Chess continued to spread from English, and now there are a bunch of languages which have terms for the game that actually got borrowed from English. Take, for example, Japanese. Although they already have many words related to corresponding pieces from the Japanese game shogi, the terms for chess pieces, king, queen, rook, bishop, knight, and pawn seem to ring a couple bells, don't they? Sometimes one language can get all sorts of influences from different directions, often at different times, but sometimes even at the same time. Somewhere we can see this is Maltese, a language of an island nation whose central location in the middle of the Mediterranean means that it has had many influences and gained loads of loanwords over the millennia. Although the term scacchi exists in the language, borrowed from the Italian scacchi, the most common word for the game today appears to be chess. We can also see a similar pattern in Swahili. We mentioned before that it had its word sataranji from Arabic, but it also now has the word chessi in common use. In this journey, we've seen how the spread of cultures and languages is intertwined, and how language can be used as a lens when we're examining the way cultural things spread across the world. Next time you're spending time with friends or family playing chess, why not think about the amazing trek it took to reach you and all the interesting little facts it left in its path?